Hello everybody, John Trigger 12 back again with another video. Now, once again, getting back on the high horse, so to speak. Getting into the groove of things. Things are a little tricky and a little rough at the start. I've been on a hiatus and it's been difficult to make videos again for me personally. I never thought I would say that, but it's actually been very, very hard to make videos again the way I used to. So sorry if my videos have been coming out differently or the way I speak is different or anything. It's just very, very hard for me, but because of my personal life. But essentially, let's move off of that and get into the fun and games, which is top 5. Another top 5, John Tricker 12 top 5 picks. Today I'm doing my top 5 personal favorite superhero comic book movies. Now, of course, there's various comic book movies. I'm just focusing on DC and Marvel superhero comic book movies. Because I don't want to get into the whole, like there's the indie comics and then there's the horror comics and then there's like sci-fi comics and all that nonsense. I don't want to get into that. That's too much thinking, too overthinking, just nonsense. So let's just get right into it of the comic book movies, superhero comic book movies. So starting up at number 5 has to go to the original Richard Donner Superman movie. It's possibly the most and the first greatest superhero comic book movie of all time. And of course, there's various other Superman movies, and of course, the new Man of Steel universe. And as much as I love the Man of Steel universe, and I think it still has yet to get its dues, the respect that it deserves, you just can't beat the original Superman universe. And even though the first two are the best, Superman is just an amazing character, and the first movie that they did with Christopher Reeves is just awesome. Christopher Reeves just flies off the screen as Superman, and it's just, you believe it. You see it and you know that it's true, and there is a Superman out there. Because prior to that, actors who played Superman in a visual format usually wore muscle suits. They never worked out. They weren't like physically fit actors, because at the time, back in those days, actors were actors, or and then there were stuntmen. And if you needed to have a specific character be a really big beefy guy, you just get a stuntman to play that beefy guy, or have your actor, who's a good famous actor, wear a muscle suit. But you have to really give Christopher Reeves the credit, because he definitely went the whole 10 yards as to becoming Superman. He looked the part, he spoke the part, but he didn't, have the physical superiority as the Man of Steel, and he became that through training. And you have to really respect him just as a person, and his performances is great as Clark Kent as well. But the original Superman movie is just amazing. It's definitely the template to all comic book movies of today. But let's move off of that and go right into number 4, which has to go to one of the newer Marvel movies, but it's Captain America: The First Avenger. Marvel has thousands of fucking movies. Most of them are crap. The newer ones obviously are good, but there's a lot of overrated comic book Marvel movies. But I think Captain America: First Avenger definitely gets out of there in that section. Because even though it does go along with the whole Avengers trend, and it's the Phase 1 thing, you have that whole going on, and the whole consistent references and shit, and shields nonsense. I just love Captain America: First Avenger, and I love the experience of watching it. It's definitely the first ever comic book movie that I ever saw in theaters, that there were people that I never expected to go see it. Because usually when you go into the theater to watch a comic book movie, there's a variety of audiences that you see. You either see the hipsters, you have the true comic book fans, you have like families who just want to bring their kids to see the Spider-Man on the screen, because them kids love them Spider-Mans, and then you have the people who just want to see it because of the hype, you know. But Captain America: First Avenger was the first time I went to see a comic book movie that had none of that. It was all elderly people. elderly people, and they weren't like old crappy old people. You know, you go fucking retirement home and there's a your grandpa is like all pissed off and he hates you. No, it's none of that. It's fucking people who were like veterans and people who have seen this shit and people who grew up on this comic book, because Captain America is a pretty old comic and it's set in a specific time period that speak to that type of generation. And I just love the whole experience of just witnessing it. And the movie is just amazing. I think it's one of the greatest comic book movies because it definitely feels like the comic book, you know. And I love the different stages of Steve Rogers' experimentations and crossover from the little wimp to obviously the super soldier, you know. And I love the whole experience, and I love the time frame. It was good to have Captain America for regardless of all the Avengers and future stuff they did and continue to do. It's good for the first movie to have him be in his time period, and I loved how they did it, and they pulled it off great. You know, I know you guys are like, what? Winter Soldier's better than that shit. Fuck you, John Trigger 12. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what? Fuck you. If you fucking go back and watch First Avenger, it's a pretty good, enjoyable movie. And when I think of specific comic book characters like Captain America, I think of him in that time period. It just feels awkward and weird to seeing him in today. That's why I don't really care for him as much as in future movies. But I digress. Anyways, moving off of that, let's go right into the three. Number three has to go, moving off of, obviously, number four. Number three has to be Iron Man. Iron Man is just an awesome, epic, cool fucking comic book movie. Obviously, it's the first Marvel movie in their first phase to going into Avengers. And obviously, my main focus was, fuck, this is a pretty good goddamn movie. You know, it's probably the only Marvel comic book movie that I can take serious that's not full blown comic booky. You know, because you have your Chris Nolans and you have people like that who create an experience of watching a comic book movie feel like watching, you know, like a good, you know, normal movie. You know, because when you watch comic book movies, specifically Marvel movies, especially at that time period, it's really bullshit and boring and crap. But after Iron Man, it was like, fuck, the experience of watching Marvel movies are fucking phenomenal. It's fucking amazing. And plus, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark was just, it's one of those things where you're like, And then when you see it, you're like, oh shit, this is fucking Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr., shit. I just fucking love it. I love Jon Favreau's like just his performance and his directing. He just did great doing Iron Man. His first Iron Man is just perfect. Of course, the sequels I'm not that fond of, but that first Iron Man movie, that opened the doors. You know, if it wasn't for that first Iron Man, you wouldn't have any of this other shit. So you have to give them props, and I just love it. It's one of those movies that specifically at that time, I just watched again and again and again and again, and it was just a good experience, and I just love it. It's a great comic book movie, and I suggest checking it out. But let's move off of that and go to number two. Obviously, it has to go to The Avengers. The Avengers is one of those comic book movies that's a little too overrated, and obviously it's probably the main movie that I personally like to think is the reason as to making comic books and specifically comic book movies mainstream, you know, because obviously you've had your box office successes with previous comic book movies, you know, like your Sam Raimi Spider-Mans and your Bryan Singer X-Men's and stuff, but Avengers was like, fuck, it made a shit ton of money and fucking made a huge impact in our culture that year when it came out. So it's definitely was pretty big. So, but when I watch it again, like after any time has passed, I kind of feel like, you know what, this movie's still pretty good. It's still enjoyable, and plus, it's definitely one of the many or short list of many comic book movies that definitely show the full scale of a comic book, you know, because when you watch Avengers, it kind of feels like when you're watching and when you're reading the comic books, you're reading this and you're like, God, wouldn't it be awesome they could do this? Just be like big epic scenarios and these full page fucking artwork of like this craziness and explosions and multiple people are fighting each other and shit. You wish you could see that. With the Avengers, you're seeing that. You're not seeing one clip where Captain America is fighting. You're seeing Captain America next to Thor and possibly Iron Man fighting side by side at the same clip. It's fucking amazing. So I really love Avengers. I definitely can't wait to see future installments into the Avengers. But let's move off of that and get into some honorable mentions that did not get into my list that I'm sure a lot of people of you are asking for. Man of Steel, Dark Knight Rises, Batman Begins, Tim Burton's Batman. I love the previous Batmans. Bryan Singer's X-Men's. I really like X-Men First Class. It's a pretty good, enjoyable X-Men movie and one of my personal favorites. The Wolverine. Let's see. Other good superhero comic book movies. The other Superman movies. I like Fantastic Four, not that much anymore, but I liked it at the time. And of course the Amazing Spider-Man, and I definitely can't wait for the new sequel. So, which reminds me that because I'm doing it at this time, I definitely hope you guys enjoy future comic book movies that are coming out, because I will definitely be making reviews of those. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But let's move off of that and get right into my number one, which I know you guys are thinking to yourselves, like, God, that's fucking cliche as fuck. You just can't give it. Yes, number one goes to The Dark Knight. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. And I know I'm throwing out the F-bombs like crazy. I'm sorry, people with profanity. I'm not a role model. I'm not. As much as I like to be, I'm not. So I have to throw out some F-bombs to just make sure you guys get the picture. The number one comic book movies that I personally love has to go to The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight, not even the movie, it's just the experience alone was worth it. 2008, when that movie came out, even before it came out, there was so much hype and just so much controversial shit going on. Just at that exact moment in time, I wish I can relive, because at that time it was pretty fucking awesome. And I definitely spent a good chunk of change on fucking witnessing that movie, the day it came. The Dark Knight is one of those movies that I personally look at, and I don't even see a comic book movie. It's kind of like when I watch Akira, the anime. I know it's a big, over-exaggerated, it's an anime film, but I kind of see it as its own movie, I don't see it as an anime film. I see it as like, oh, Akira is a movie. And The Dark Knight's kind of like that. Kind of like how Iron Man did that for me in the Marvel side. DC did that for me with, Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy is kind of like the opening of like your eyes as a comic book fan, where you're like, oh, you don't really have to have everything be all fantastical and people being like, huh, what? You can have your characters be set in today's world, in this realistic setting. You don't have to have characters be in this super ultra realistic world with the occasional taglines and fucking barriers and panels and all that nonsense. No, you can fucking have them be like out in the city. You have Batman in the city, not on a soundstage anymore. And I fucking love it. And The Dark Knight it's my definitive Batman movie. I love Tim Burton's original '89 Batman movie, and I love the sequels, even though they may have not done as well. I love them as well, but that Dark Knight movie is just amazing. It's just filled with just amazing stuff. It's a good, fucking awesome story. I love Heath Ledger's performance. I know people like to give Christian Bale about the voice, but I love Christian Bale's performance as well. But The Dark Knight is just my definitive, not only Batman movie, but comic book superhero movie, and I just love it. The experience alone was just amazing, and the movie itself is, when I watch it again after years, when it first came out, it's still an amazing watch. So, but I'm gonna end it here, and I hope you guys enjoyed my video of my top 5 personal favorite superhero comic book movies. Hope you guys enjoyed, and check out my upcoming top. And of course, it's been totally subjective. So obviously, give me your top 5. What's your top 5 personal favorite superhero comic book movies? Check you guys later.